You set an alarm once, not to wake up early for work, not for anything urgent. You set it because you told yourself, tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow I start. Tomorrow I fix this. The alarm rang, you turned it off. And then you lay there, not sleeping, not awake, just existing in that strange gap between who you are and who you were going to be. You have been in that gap your whole life. That moment, that exact moment, is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is not a character flaw you need to overcome with the right morning routine or the right motivational video. It is something much older than that, something that has been running inside you since before you were aware of it, and nobody has ever shown you what it actually is. Think about the last time you genuinely decided to change something, not a passing thought, a real decision, the kind where you felt it in your chest, where something in you said, no more. This is it. I am done being this version of myself. Maybe it was about your diet. Maybe it was about prayer. Maybe it was about a relationship you kept returning to even though you knew what it was doing to you. Maybe it was about your phone, the hours you lose to it every night, every morning, every in-between moment that used to be quiet. You decided, you committed, you meant it, and for a few days, maybe even a week, something shifted. You felt lighter, more aligned, like you had finally gotten a grip on yourself. And then, slowly, without drama, without any clear moment of failure, you returned, not all at once, quietly, like water finding its level. The old habit came back, the old feeling came back. The old version of you, the one you were so certain you had left behind, was just sitting there, waiting, patient, familiar, like it knew. And you told yourself it was a setback, a temporary slip. But if you are honest, truly honest, you know this has happened before, many times before. And the question that lives underneath all of it, the one you do not say out loud, is this: why can't I change? Not why is it hard? You know it is hard. You have made peace with hard. But why does it always end the same way? Why do I always return to the same version of myself? That question is not a productivity problem. It is not a discipline problem. It is a question about the architecture of the self. And the answer is something most people never receive. There is a concept that existed long before modern psychology gave us words like identity, subconscious, and behavioral loop. The scholars of the inner world, the ones who spent decades not reading about the human soul but observing it, studying it, testing it in the laboratory of their own lives, they used a word, a nefs, the nafs. Most people who have heard this word think it simply means the self, or the soul, or something vaguely spiritual that only applies to religious practice. But that is not what it means. Not really. The nafs is not just who you are, it is who you keep being. It is the pattern that reasserts itself. It is the gravitational pull that brings you back to the same place, the same reactions, the same choices, even when your mind has decided something different. It is the version of you that exists beneath the version of you that wants to change. And here is what nobody tells you. The nafs does not fight you loudly. It does not argue. It does not resist. It does not stand up and say, I refuse to change. It simply waits. It lets you have your moment of clarity. It lets you feel the decision. It lets you believe the alarm will work, the plan will hold, the resolution will stick. And then, slowly, gently, without ever announcing itself, it pulls you back. Not because you are weak, because you never understood what you were actually up against. Imagine you are standing in a river. You decide to walk upstream. You commit to it. You take the first steps. The water pushes against you, but you move. You feel the effort. You feel the progress. But the moment your attention wavers, the moment you stop actively swimming, the current takes you back downstream, not because you failed, because water behaves like water. The nafs behaves like water. It does not need to defeat you. It just needs you to stop actively resisting. And the moment your energy drops, the moment life gets busy or heavy or complicated, it takes you back to the default, your default, the pattern that has been reinforced for years, the comfort you return to, the behavior that feels like you even when you know it is not serving you. And this is where the first thing you were taught about change is wrong. You were taught that change requires motivation, that if you want it badly enough, you will do it. That desire is the engine, but the nafs does not respond to desire. The nafs responds to repetition. It is built from repetition. It was constructed slowly, over years, by the things you did when no one was watching, by the choices you made in private, by the small surrenders that felt harmless in the moment but accumulated into a shape, your shape. And now that shape has weight, and you are trying to change it with a feeling, with an alarm, with a decision made at 11 at night when you are tired and emotional and genuinely meant it. And the nafs just waits because it has seen this before. There is something that happens in the days after a big decision. The first day feels like liberation. The second day feels manageable. The third day starts to feel like effort. The fourth day, something changes. Not dramatically, not in a way you can point to, but something underneath shifts. A quiet voice, not a loud one, not the voice of temptation or desire, something subtler. It says, this isn't really you, not as a criticism, as an observation. This structure you've built, these new habits, this new identity you're trying to step into, it says, this is not who you are. This is who you are trying to be. And there is a difference. And the terrifying thing is, it is right. Because the new version of you does not yet exist with weight. It exists only as intention, as an image in your mind, as a feeling you had once. But the old version of you, the one you are trying to leave, that one has years of evidence behind it, years of reinforcement, years of data that says, this is who you actually are when no one is looking, when you are tired, when life does not cooperate. The nafs is loyal to the version of you with the most evidence. And right now, the new version of you has almost none. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the system working exactly as it was designed. The scholars who mapped the inner life did not see the nafs as the enemy. They saw it as, and this is important, a faculty, a part of you that has its own logic, its own needs, its own intelligence. Al-Ghazali, writing centuries ago about the architecture of the soul, described the nafs not as evil, but as untrained, as something that, left to itself, defaults to comfort, avoidance, and repetition, not because it wants to destroy you, because comfort is what it knows, because avoidance is what it learned, because repetition is what makes it feel safe. And safety, for the nafs, is more important than growth. Every time, unless you understand this, you will keep making the same mistake. You will try to change your behavior without addressing the thing underneath your behavior. You will change what you do in the morning without understanding what you believe about yourself at noon. You will change your habits without changing your internal narrative. And the nafs will wait, and the nafs will win. Not because it is powerful, because you are fighting it on the wrong level. Let's go deeper. Because there is something else happening, something beneath the nafs. There is the qalb, the qalb, the heart. And before you think of this as a metaphor, before you translate it into something soft and poetic, stop. Because the scholars who used this word were not being poetic, they were being precise. The qalb, in Islamic psychology, is not the seat of emotion. Not exactly. It is the seat of orientation. It is the part of you that faces a direction. When the qalb is stable, unified, and facing one direction, the person is coherent. Their actions align with their intentions. Their outer life reflects their inner state. When the qalb is divided, when it wants two things at once, faces two directions, holds two contradictory truths, The person lives in conflict, and that conflict feels like what? Procrastination, avoidance, starting and stopping, knowing what you should do and doing something else entirely. That familiar feeling of being split, of having one part of you that wants to grow and another part of you that resists, that is not confusion. That is a divided Qalb. And here is what nobody says. Most people trying to change are operating from a divided heart. One part of you genuinely wants the new version. It is real. The desire is real. But another part of you, equally real, equally powerful, is attached to something in the old version. Maybe it is the comfort. Maybe it is the identity. Maybe it is the way people treat you now, the expectations they have, the role you play, and the fear of who you become if you actually change. Because changing is not just about gaining something new. It always involves losing something old. And the Qalb, without realizing it, is grieving that loss before it has even happened. This is why you stall. This is why you get close and then pull back. This is why you have a perfect plan and then find a reason to not start. Not because you don't want it, because part of you does not want to lose what you already have. Even if what you already have is hurting you, there is a specific kind of pain that nobody talks about. It is the pain of being attached to a version of yourself that you know is beneath you. You know it. You see it clearly. In your most honest moments, late at night, or in the middle of a prayer, or just after something embarrassing, you see yourself with complete clarity and you think, this is not who I want to be. But then morning comes and you are that person again, and you tell yourself it is fine. It is a process. Everyone struggles, and it is fine. It is a process, but there is something underneath the reassurance that you do not examine, the attachment. Because that version of you, the one you claim to want to leave, you know it. You understand it. You know exactly how it thinks, exactly how it fails, exactly what it does in every situation. It is predictable, and predictability for the Qalb is a form of safety. The new version of you, unknown, unpredictable. You do not yet know how it handles difficulty. You do not yet know how it feels to succeed consistently. You do not yet know who you are when you are actually disciplined, actually present, actually living in alignment with your values. And the unknown is frightening, even when the known is painful. This is not weakness. This is the logic of a heart that has not yet been convinced. And you cannot convince a heart with a plan. You can only convince a heart with experience, with evidence, with small, repeated moments of, I said I would do this, and I did it. Not grand change, not transformation, not becoming a different person overnight. Just I said I would pray Fajr today, and I did. I said I would not open that app for 1 hour, and I did not. I said I would read 1 page, and I read 1 page. Small, almost embarrassingly small. But the Qalb registers these moments. It begins to update its evidence. It begins to believe, slowly, cautiously, that the new version of you is not just an idea. It is something that actually exists, but we have not yet touched the deepest layer. Because above all of this, above the Nafs with its patterns and the Qalb with its attachments, there is the Ruh, the spirit. And the Ruh is not like the Nafs or the Qalb. It does not pull you in directions. It does not have needs in the same way. It does not attach or resist or avoid. The Ruh is simply aware. It is the part of you that watches, the part that has always known. And here is what is strange about the Ruh. It is never fooled. When you are scrolling at midnight, telling yourself you will stop in 5 minutes, the Ruh is watching. It knows this is not 5 minutes. When you break a promise to yourself and then find a reason why that was actually fine, the Ruh is not convinced. It knows what happened. When you perform your best version of yourself in front of others and then return to the private version when alone, the Ruh has seen both. It does not choose one, it holds both. And this creates something, a tension, a low-grade, persistent, unnamed tension that lives in the background of your life. You feel it as dissatisfaction, as the sense that something is off, even when everything on the outside is fine, as the feeling that you are not quite real, that the version of you that the world sees is slightly different from the version that actually exists. That tension is the refusing to accept the fiction, and you have been trying to reduce that tension in ways that do not work. More success, more entertainment, more distraction, more planning, more new beginnings. But the tension is not a productivity problem. It is not a lifestyle problem. It is the Ruh calling you toward coherence, toward integration, toward the moment when who you are in private is the same person who exists in public, when what you believe and what you do are not two separate realities, when you are not managing a gap between the self you present and the self you actually live as. That is what the Ruh wants. Not perfection, coherence. And here is where this becomes uncomfortable, because most people's attempts at change are actually attempts to resolve the tension without doing the real work. A new routine, a new environment, a new relationship, a new city, a new version of the schedule, the diet, the plan. And these things feel like change. They look like change. They create the sensation of change. But the Nafs traveled with you to the new city. The Qalb brought its attachments into the new relationship. The Ruh is still watching the same patterns play out in a different setting. Because the geography changed, the psychology did not. And after a few weeks, maybe a few months if you are particularly committed, you find yourself back in the same place. Not physically, internally. The same feelings, the same resistance, the same gap between who you are trying to be and who you actually are when no one is watching. And this time it is worse, because now you have evidence that even a new beginning doesn't fix it. And the question becomes louder. What is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you, but something is misunderstood. You have been trying to change your behavior, but behavior is the last layer. It is the visible surface of something that goes much, much deeper. Think of it this way. Behavior comes from habit. Habit comes from pattern. Pattern comes from belief. Belief comes from identity. And identity, in the deepest sense, comes from your relationship with your own Nafs. If the Nafs has been allowed to run unchecked, if it has spent years operating on its own logic, seeking comfort, avoiding difficulty, defaulting to what is familiar, then it has built an identity, not the identity you would choose for yourself consciously, but the identity of least resistance, the version of you that requires the least effort to maintain. And that identity has roots, deep ones, and you have been pulling at the leaves. Changing your morning routine is pulling at a leaf. Downloading a new app is pulling at a leaf. Setting a new rule for yourself is pulling at a leaf. The root is the belief system of the Nafs, what it believes about what you deserve, what it believes about whether you are capable, what it believes about whether real change is actually possible for someone like you. And until you go to the root, until you sit with the Nafs honestly, without judgment but with clarity, the leaves will grow back every time. There is a specific kind of self-deception that intelligent people fall into. It is the deception of insight without change. You understand yourself very well. You can explain your patterns. You can trace them back to where they started. You can articulate exactly what you do, why you do it, and what the cost is. And then you do it again. Because understanding is not the same as transformation. You can map the entire river and still be carried by the current. The Nafs does not fear your self-knowledge. It fears your sustained action. It fears the moment you do the right thing, not because you feel motivated, not because you had an insight, not because you made a decision, but because it is simply what you do now. Because the discipline has become quiet, because the effort has become invisible. because the new pattern has accumulated enough repetition to have weight. That is what the Nafs fears, not your plans, your consistency. And now let's talk about something that lives right at the center of all of this, the broken promise. Not the promises you break to other people. Those matter. But they are not what we are discussing. The promise you break to yourself, the one you make in silence, the one no one else heard, the one you made when you were alone and honest and genuinely committed. I will wake up for Fajr. I will not speak to that person the way I spoke to them yesterday. I will read tonight instead of scrolling. I will start that thing I have been postponing for 3 months, and then you don't. And something happens after you don't. Not guilt, not shame. Something quieter, something that over time becomes the most damaging thing in your inner life. You stop believing yourself, not consciously, not with a clear decision, but slowly. The part of you that makes promises, the part that says I will, begins to lose authority. Because you have heard it say I will many times, and you have watched it not follow through. So when it says I will again, something underneath you says we'll see, not sarcastically, almost sadly, we'll see. And that doubt, that quiet, accumulated doubt about your own word, is the invisible wall between you and real change. Because change requires trusting yourself, and you have given yourself reasons not to. One small broken promise at a time, each one almost harmless by itself, but they compound until the gap between what you say to yourself and what you believe about yourself becomes a canyon, and you stand on one side of it, looking at the person you want to become on the other side, and you think, I'll start tomorrow. Not because tomorrow is better, because you need one more day before you have to find out whether you'll follow through or not. This is what living in the Nafs al-Amara looks like. The commanding self. The Nafs in its most basic, unrefined state, commanding you toward what feels good now, away from what costs something now, toward immediate relief, away from delayed reward. It is not evil. The scholars never said it was evil. They said it was untrained. An untrained horse is not a bad horse. It is simply a horse that has not learned where to direct its energy. And until it is trained, it will go wherever the terrain is easiest. And for most people, the terrain of least resistance is not growth. It is repetition. The same conversation you always have with yourself. The same response to difficulty. The same retreat into comfort when things become demanding. The same version of you, returning, always returning. But there is something else the scholars mapped, a movement, a possibility. The Nafs al-Lawwama, the self-reproaching self. This is the Nafs that has woken up just enough to feel the gap, to feel the dissonance between what it does and what it knows it should do, to experience the friction of not being who it wants to be. This is actually a higher state. This is the Nafs that suffers. And most people treat their suffering as a problem to be solved. But the scholars treated it as a sign that the Ruh is not sleeping, a sign that something in you has not given up, a sign that the reproach you feel, the discomfort, the dissatisfaction, the I should be better than this, is not self-hatred. It is the soul's refusal to settle. The problem is that most people get stuck here. They feel the reproach. They make the promise. They break it. They feel the reproach again, round and round, not progressing, not settling, just cycling, because the reproach is real, but it has not yet been directed correctly. It has not yet been aimed at the root. It has been aimed at the behavior. You feel bad about the scrolling, not about the avoidance underneath the scrolling. You feel bad about the broken fast, not about the identity that keeps breaking things. You feel bad about the symptom, not the pattern that produces the symptom. And so the cycle continues. The Nafs al-Lawwama suffers, but it does not transform, not yet. The transformation, the actual movement, requires something that is not discussed enough. It requires honesty with the Nafs, not judgment, not punishment, not the harsh internal voice that calls you weak or lazy or broken. Honesty, sitting with yourself, really sitting, not in the 5 minutes before sleep when you're half conscious, but in actual, awake, deliberate stillness, and asking, what am I actually doing? Not what do I intend, not what do I wish, not what do I plan. What am I actually, repeatedly, consistently doing? And then, this is the harder part, asking, what does this tell me I actually believe? Because your behavior is not a reflection of your intentions. Your behavior is a reflection of your beliefs. If you keep avoiding prayer, you do not actually believe at the level of the nafs that it will change anything for you. You might believe it intellectually. You might even believe it emotionally in certain moments. But the nafs level belief, the one that drives behavior, says, it won't matter. If you keep returning to that relationship that diminishes you, you do not actually believe at the level of the nafs that you deserve something different. The intellectual belief might say you do, but the nafs says, this is what is available to you. If you keep procrastinating on the thing that matters most to you, you do not actually believe at the level of the nafs that you are capable of doing it well. The surface belief says, I'll do it when I'm ready. The nafs believes, I'm afraid to find out what I actually am. And this is where the qalb becomes essential, because the qalb is where beliefs live. And the qalb is what needs to change. Not the schedule, not the environment, not the plan, the qalb. And the qalb changes through muhasabah. This word is usually translated as self-accountability. But that translation is too small. Muhasabah is the practice of sitting with your own account, like a merchant at the end of the day who does not skip the ledger, who does not round up and hope, who looks at exactly what came in and exactly what went out and calculates the truth of where they stand. You are the merchant. Your life is the ledger. And most people have not done muhasabah in years. They have done guilt. They have done shame. They have done the internal conversation that goes, I should be better, I'll try harder, tomorrow is different. But they have not done the honest, clear-eyed accounting of, what did I do today? What did I say I would do? What is the gap between those two things? And most importantly, why? Not why as in finding an excuse. Why as in, what does this pattern reveal about what I actually believe? That is muhasabah, and it is the practice that begins to move the qalb. Because when you see the pattern with honesty, without flinching, without rushing to reassure yourself, something shifts. The nafs cannot hide from its own account, and the qalb, when shown the truth without judgment, begins to reorganize slowly. But it begins. Let's go back to the moment we started with, the alarm. You set it because you meant it, and you turned it off, and you lay there in that gap. That gap, that uncomfortable, heavy, familiar gap, is not a failure. It is information. It is the exact location where your intention ends and your identity begins. And the identity is what you actually are in that moment, at that level. Not who you want to be, not who you will be, not who you once were, who you are right now, at the level of the nafs. And the question is not, how do I make myself get up? The question is, who is the person who gets up? What does that person believe? What has that person convinced their nafs of through repeated action? Because nobody who gets up easily for Fajr is doing it on motivation. They are doing it on identity. The nafs has been trained. The pattern has been reinforced. The belief at the deepest level is, this is who I am. This is what I do, not what I want to do, what I do. And that identity was built the same way every identity is built, one small moment at a time, one followed through decision at a time. One I said this and I did this at a time, until the nafs recognized the pattern, until the qalb updated its evidence, until the ruh found coherence. But there is something that must be said about the ruh now, about the quiet layer. Because everything we have discussed, the nafs and its pull, the qalb and its attachments, the muhasabah, the identity, the patterns, all of it takes place in a context, and the context is your relationship with something beyond yourself. The Ruh was not placed in you as a decorative element. It was not given to you so you could feel vaguely spiritual when you look at a sunset. The Ruh is the part of you that is in direct proximity to the divine, and when that proximity is maintained through prayer that is real, through remembrance that is present, through moments of genuine surrender, the Ruh transmits something to the Qalb: stability, not happiness, not the absence of difficulty, stability. The Qalb that is connected through the Ruh to something beyond its own desire and fear does not divide as easily. It holds direction. It does not fragment when things are hard. And when the Qalb is stable, the Nafs has less control. Not because you have suppressed it, because you have given it something better than comfort. Certainty. The certainty that there is a direction worth moving in, that the effort means something, that the struggle is not random, that you are not building yourself in a vacuum hoping it matters. That is not religion as obligation. That is the Ruh doing what it was made to do. And when it is disconnected, when the only relationship you have with the divine is in moments of crisis or obligation or guilt, the Qalb loses its anchor and the Nafs fills the space with comfort, with avoidance, with the familiar version of you, pulling you back, always back. There is a question I want to sit with you in for a moment. Not answer, sit in. Who told you that you are the version of yourself you keep returning to? Think about it. The self you recognize as you, the one that procrastinates, that avoids, that breaks promises, that feels stuck. When did that become the definitive version? Was there a moment, a series of moments, or did it just accumulate slowly until the weight of repetition made it feel like truth? Because the Nafs is not who you are. It is who you have been, consistently, repeatedly, to the point where it has the authority of identity. But it is not permanent. And here is the thing about the scholars who mapped this: Al-Ghazali, Ibn Qayyim, the ones who spent their lives in the science of the soul. They were not pessimists about human nature. They were realists. They knew the Nafs was powerful, but they also knew the Nafs was educable. It can be trained, not broken, not suppressed, not punished into submission, trained. The way a river can be redirected, not by fighting the water, by building new channels. Small channels at first, almost invisible, but real. And this is where we arrive at something practical. Something that is not advice in the conventional sense, but is the actual mechanism. You cannot change who you are by deciding to be different. You can only change who you are by repeatedly doing different. And the key word is repeatedly, not once. Not when you feel motivated, not when conditions are ideal and the feeling is right. Repeatedly. In the morning when you don't feel it. In the evening when you're tired. On the day when something difficult happened and the old version of you is pulling very hard, especially then. Because the Nafs is trained by what you do when it is inconvenient, not by what you do when it is easy. Doing the right thing when it is easy tells the Nafs, this is fine in good conditions. Doing the right thing when it is hard tells the Nafs, this is who we are. And the Nafs listens to what you do in difficulty. It updates its understanding of you based on your behavior under pressure. Every time you do the hard thing when you don't want to, you are speaking to the Nafs in a language it understands. You are saying, we are not turning back. And slowly, very slowly, so slowly you will not notice it in the day-to-day, the Nafs begins to believe you. There is one more layer here that sits in the space between the Qalb and the Nafs. It is the layer of the story you tell yourself about yourself. Every person has a narrative, an internal story about who they are, what they are capable of, what they deserve, how their life goes. And this narrative, which feels like observation, like simply describing reality, is actually more like instruction. The Nafs follows the story. If the story says, I am the kind of person who always starts over, the Nafs will arrange for you to always be starting over. If the story says, I am too sensitive to handle real pressure, the Nafs will ensure that pressure undoes you. If the story says, I have always been this way, look at my whole life, the Nafs accepts this as truth and repeats the pattern with confidence, not because you chose this, because the Nafs is not creative. It is loyal to the story with the most repetition. And you have been telling yourself this story with your internal voice, with the conclusions you draw from your failures, with the labels you accept for years. And the Nafs has been listening and repeating and repeating. This is not about positive thinking. Do not make it about positive thinking. This is about truth. The question is, what is actually true about you? Not what is comfortable, not what protects you from disappointment. What is true? Are you actually incapable of changing? Or have you simply not yet changed consistently enough for long enough to update the story? Because the story can change, but it changes through evidence. And evidence comes from action. And action begins with one decision that you actually keep. Not a grand one, a small one. So small that the Nafs cannot organize a strong enough resistance. So small that failure is almost embarrassing. And then you keep it. And then you keep the next one. And you build evidence. Slowly, quietly, until the story begins to shift. Let's talk about what happens when you are succeeding, because there is something strange that occurs when the new version of you starts to take shape. Something the Nafs does that nobody warns you about. It does not fight you directly. It introduces doubt at exactly the moment of progress. You have been consistent for 3 weeks. You have kept your promises. You have felt the identity beginning to shift. The Qalb is more stable. The Ruh feels less distant. And then, precisely then, the Nafs introduces a thought, not a temptation, something more sophisticated, a question. Is this actually sustainable? Who are you becoming? What if you succeed at this and it still isn't enough? What if the new version of you is still not happy? These are not the thoughts of a weak Nafs. These are the thoughts of a Nafs that knows direct resistance has failed, and so it tries something else. It creates doubt at the threshold of progress. And if you do not recognize this for what it is, if you engage with the questions as though they are genuine spiritual concerns, you will slow down, you will overthink, you will add unnecessary complexity to something that was actually working, and you will not cross the threshold. This is one of the most important things to understand about the inner life. Not every thought that arises during growth is wisdom. Some of it is the Nafs protecting its own existence. Because here is what the Nafs fears at this level. If you actually change, if the new identity takes root, what happens to the old one? It dies. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually. As the new pattern becomes the default, the old pattern loses its authority. And the Nafs, which was that pattern, experiences this as a kind of dissolution. It is not going to cooperate with its own dissolution. It is going to introduce every possible reason for doubt. And you need to know this is coming, not to fight it, but to recognize it, to see it clearly and say, I see you. This is the Nafs protecting itself. I am not going to engage with this right now, and keep moving. There is something Al-Ghazali wrote, not in the abstract, but from personal experience, about the moment of genuine change. He described a person sitting with themselves in complete honesty, not in a dramatic moment of crisis, in an ordinary moment, seeing clearly. And in that clarity, not in motivation, not in inspiration, but in clear, honest seeing, something shifts. Not a feeling of power, a feeling of understanding, of I see what this is, and I see what I actually want, and I see the distance between them, and I am not going to pretend the distance isn't there anymore. That moment, that clear-eyed, unromantic, undefended moment of honest seeing is the beginning, not the resolution, just the beginning. Because transformation is not a moment, it is a direction. And the direction begins in honesty. We are almost at the end of this, but there is one more thing, something that lives right at the core of why you return to the same version of yourself. It is not the nafs. It is not the patterns. It is not even the broken promises. It is this. You have not decided who you are yet. Not really. You have decided who you want to be, but want is soft. Want can wait. Want negotiates with difficulty. Want takes the night off when things are hard. The question underneath all of this, the one that every pattern, every return, every failed new beginning is pointing toward, is who are you? Not who do you want to be. Who are you when no one is watching? When it is inconvenient, when it costs something, when the nafs is pulling very hard and the qalb is tired and the ruh is quiet. Who are you then? Because that answer, the real answer, the one you live rather than speak, is your identity. And your identity is what the nafs protects, and it will protect whatever you have established as the truth of you. So the work is not to change your habits. The work is to decide with the kind of decision that has weight, that has the full authority of the qalb behind it, who you actually are. Not who you would like to be someday. Who you are, starting now. Not perfectly, not without struggle, not without the nafs resisting and the old patterns asserting themselves, but in direction, clearly, consistently, honestly. And then, when you break the promise, when you return to the old pattern, when you wake up one day and realize you have drifted, you do not perform guilt. You do muhasabah. You look at the account honestly. You identify the moment of drift. You recommit, not with emotion, but with the quiet authority of someone who has decided. And you return to the direction, not to the perfect version, to the direction. And you keep returning to the direction, not because you have overcome the nafs, but because you have decided that the direction matters more than the comfort of staying still. And eventually, quietly, without announcement, in some ordinary moment you will not notice until later, the nafs will follow, because that is what the nafs does in the end. It follows what is most repeated. It follows what you have most consistently told it is true. It follows the identity you have built one moment at a time, one kept promise at a time, one honest reckoning at a time. And on that day, you will not feel like you have changed. You will just feel like yourself. For the first time, the real self, the one that was underneath all the returning, waiting, patient, certain you would eventually stop running from it. You don't change by becoming someone else. You change by finally becoming who you actually are.